Today I'm going to teach you how to play Cosmic Colonies from Floodgate Games. I'm Mark Maya. Welcome to Board Game Coffee. In Cosmic Colonies, players take on the role of spacefaring pioneers set out to develop a colony on their very own asteroid. But to do this, they're going to need to utilize the unique talents of the workers at their disposal. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to play a basic 3-player game of Cosmic Colonies. But if you hang in toward the end of the video, I'll tell you how to modify the lesson to play an advanced game and a 2-player game. Let's get started. The objective of the game is to use these Tetris-like shapes to cover up as much of these 3 different terrain types as possible. You're free to cover up these basic terrain types if you want, but they won't earn you any additional points. The player with the most points at the end of 8 rounds wins. Let's start with a quick overview of all the game's phases, then we'll go over each of them in detail. The action phase is where players secretly select a worker, determine turn order, and then decide whether they want to collect resources or construct a building on their asteroid with the resources they've collected. Once each player has had a chance to do this twice, we move on to the refresh phase. The refresh phase signals the end of the round. This is also the part of the game where you refill any empty building slots on your main board, restock your resources, move the round tracker, and pass over any workers you use this turn to the player on your left. Repeat this process for 8 rounds, tally up your points, and determine the winner. Now that you have a rough idea of what you're getting into, let's set up the table and learn how to play Cosmic Colonies. The first thing you're going to want to do is place the main board in the center of the table. If playing a 4 to 5 player game, you'll use this side, as indicated here. For this how to play, we're going to be setting up a 3-player game, so we'll be using the other side, also indicated here. The main board is where players will collect resources and purchase buildings, so let's load it up. First, place 1 resource per player in its matching location. So, for our 3-player game, we'll be placing 3 resources at each location. Place all extra resources off to the side, forming your supply area. Then fill up these building slots with the matching shape. Place only 1 building tile per slot, and set the remaining shapes aside. We'll need those a little later. You'll also notice that these shapes don't appear on the board. These are only used if a worker card calls them out specifically. So for now, keep them with the rest of the shapes off to the side. Place your round marker on the number 1 slot of the round track, and place your scoreboard along with a score marker for each player off to the side. You won't need those till the scoring phase at the end of the game. Now, give each player a random asteroid board with this single gear icon facing up. The side with the multiple gears is for the advanced game, which we'll touch on later. Also give each player 1 resource of each type from the supply. Now it's time to select your workers. Worker cards come in 3 different varieties: your basic workers, advanced workers, and solo workers. Each worker set has an identifying icon on the back, which will help you identify which stack of worker cards you should be playing with. So, if you were playing a solo game, you would use this stack of workers. For an advanced game, you would use this stack. And for a basic game, use this one right here. Since we're setting up for a basic 3-player game, that's the stack we'll be using. Place the other cards back in the box. We won't be needing those. Once you have your stack of 20 worker cards, shuffle them up and deal each player 4 cards face down. Any remaining cards will be placed back in the box. You won't be using those this game. Last but not least, take the objective cards, shuffle them up, and deal 1 face down to each player. Each player should take this time to look at their objective card, but keep them secret from other players until the scoring phase at the end of the game. So, that's the end of the setup, but you're probably wondering, what are these for? Well, this board is only used in solo player mode, and these cardboard bits are only used if you run out of resource tokens. which I have never had happen in all my playthroughs, but there they are, just in case. Before we get to the action phases, it's important that you know the different parts of your worker card. This number here is your worker's priority number and will determine your turn order. This number here is your carry limit and indicates how many resources this worker is capable of taking during a collect action. And this here is your worker's ability window. Each worker's ability is different. Some workers will also have keywords that will let you know when to trigger their ability. For example, the collect and build keywords are triggered when you collect or build. The before action keyword happens before you take any action. And the after action keyword happens after you take an action, and not before. Now that we have that all settled, let's move on to the action phase. The action phase is where players will select their workers and choose whether to build a structure or collect resources. And this phase is broken up into 3 steps. Step 1. Select a worker from the 4 dealt out to you at the start of the game and place it face down in front of you. Step 2. Once everyone has selected a worker, all players reveal that worker at the same time and determine turn order. The player whose worker has the lowest priority number goes first, followed by the player with the second lowest, and so on. The worker you just played will remain in front of you until the end of the refresh phase, which is also the end of the round. Now that player order has been determined, you have a choice to make. You can either collect resources or build a structure on your asteroid. Before we go any further, there are 2 things you need to keep in mind. Every worker can be used to perform a build action or a collect action. Second, most workers have a unique ability which sometimes will contradict the rules that I'll be teaching. When this happens, follow the text printed on the card. For example, the collector bot states that this worker can only be used for a collect action. Well, that already breaks one of the rules I taught you. Do what the card says. Now, let's see how we collect and or build. A collect action allows you to take resources from one of these 4 resource locations and add them to your warehouse. How many resources you can take is based on your worker's carry limit, this number right here. In this example, our architect can carry a maximum of 3 resources from any one location. If the location you selected is short on resources, then you're limited to what's available at that location. Any resources you do collect are stored here in your warehouse, which can only hold a maximum of 9 resources at a time. If you ever find yourself with more than 9 resources in your warehouse, immediately place any excess resources of your choice into the supply, not the resource locations. As a bonus, if the worker you just played has the collect keyword and you're using them to perform a collect action, follow the text in the ability window. In our example, the architect does not have the collect keyword, in which case we would not get the bonus listed. If instead I played the hydro engineer, which does have the collect keyword, I would trigger his ability. Now, let's learn how to do a build action. To perform a build action, players simply pay the cost listed next to the shape they want to build. When paying for this building here with these wild icons, you pay any 2 of the same resources and then 1 of another resource. You cannot pay 3 of the same resources for this building. To pay for a building, simply remove the required amount of resources from your warehouse and add them to the supply. Once the building is paid for, take it from the main board and add it to your asteroid. If the shape you want is not available, well, you're just out of luck. And if your worker has the build keyword and you're using them to perform a build action, follow the text in the ability window. Now, there are a few rules when placing buildings on your asteroid. You can't just place them anywhere you want. Rule number 1. Tiles must be placed inside the asteroid's grid. No part of the shape should hang over the outer perimeter. Rule number 2. Every tile you place after the first must touch a flat edge of an existing tile on your asteroid. Something like this, not like this. Rule number 3. When placing a tile, you can flip it and rotate it however you like before you place it. Rule number 4. Once a tile is placed, it cannot be moved, so plan accordingly. Once you've performed your action, it's the next player's turn to do the same. And remember, turn order is based on the priority number of the worker you just played. Once each player has taken one action, we repeat the process for a second time. Select a worker from the 3 remaining in your hand. Determine turn order based on the selected worker's priority number. Then each player takes a turn performing a build action or a collect action. Then play passes to the next player in turn order. Once each player has had a chance to take their second action, we head into the refresh phase. And the refresh phase is the part of the game where we set up for the next round. First, place 1 resource per player in its matching location. So, for our 3-player game, we'll be placing 3 resources at each location, just like we did during our initial setup. Except this time, there will probably be 1 or more resources in that location already. That's okay, just add new resources to what's already there. But there is a limit to the number of resources you can add to the location, indicated by this number here. On this side of the board, the limit is 5 per location. On the 4 to 5 player side, the limit is 7. If you ever need to place more resources on a location than is allowed, simply place as many as you can and return the excess to the supply area. Now, refill any empty building slots with buildings from the supply, and advance the round tracker 1 space. Now this next part is fairly unique to Cosmic Colonies. Each player takes the 2 workers they played in front of them this round and simultaneously passes them to the player on their left. Add the 2 cards you received to your hand and voila! You've got 4 cards again. The 2 workers that you didn't use last time and the 2 workers that your neighbor to your right did use. And that's how you play a round of Cosmic Colonies. Let's recap. Select a worker, determine turn order, collect or build, then the turn passes to the next player. Do that twice per player, run through the refresh phase, and you're done another round. It's that easy. Once you're done the 8th round, it's time to score your asteroid, and there are 3 major factors when determining your score. The amount of undeveloped terrain on your asteroid, how many complete sets of buildings you have, and your private objective card. Let's go over those one at a time. When figuring out your undeveloped terrain score, refer to this chart in the rulebook, or right here on your player mat. This chart will tell you how much you scored on each terrain type, based on how much of that terrain is currently visible. So typically, the more you cover up, the more points you'll earn. For example, on this asteroid, I can see 3 of this reddish terrain type. So, based on this chart, I score 6 points. I can also see 6 of this terrain type here, which scores me 0. And since I can't see any of the blue terrain type because I covered them all up with my buildings, I earn 5 points. If you are playing an advanced game, you would also earn 1 point for each of these plain brown tiles that were left uncovered. But in a basic game like this one, they don't earn you any extra points. Sorry. Now, let's look for completed building sets. A building set consists of these 5 different shapes. These shapes here do not count toward a building set, so you can ignore those. Each time a complete set of 5 different building shapes appears on your asteroid, you earn 15 points. Keep in mind that each building can only be counted toward 1 set. So in this example, I have 1 set here that earns me 15 points. I almost had 2 sets, but I'm short 1 L-shaped building. Ooh, so close. And lastly, our private objective cards. At this point, each player reveals their private objective card. Private objective cards are all different, but work the same way. Each player scores 2 points for each building on their asteroid that matches the top portion of their objective card, and 1 point for each building that matches the one displayed on the bottom portion. Once you've tallied up all your points, the player with the highest score is the winner. In case of a tie, the player with the most buildings on their asteroid is the winner. If there's still a tie, then the player with the most resources is the winner. And if there's still a tie, then the winner is the person who played the worker with the highest priority number in the last round of the game. And that's how you play a basic 3-player game of Cosmic Colonies. If you want to learn how to play an advanced or a 2-player game of Cosmic Colonies, we're covering that right now. But if you're looking to just play a 3 to 5-player basic game of Cosmic Colonies, then you're all set to go. Go have yourself a good time. To play an advanced game of Cosmic Colonies, simply replace the basic worker cards with the advanced worker cards when dealing out workers during the game's setup. In addition, players will be using the advanced side of their player board, indicated by this multiple gear icon here. The biggest difference when playing an advanced game is the worker cards. As you can see here, the basic worker only has one ability, where the advanced worker has 2. When playing your first worker of a round, you will only use the upper portion of their ability, indicated with this little sun icon. When you play your second worker, you are only using the lower portion of their ability, indicated with this moon icon. The only exception to this are workers with the keywords Day Ability Plus. In these cases, the player will perform both abilities listed on the card, the Day ability followed by the Night ability. In these cases, the Night ability will either add to or augment the worker's Day ability. The last adjustment that has to be made when playing in advanced mode comes when scoring your asteroid. In advanced mode, unlike basic mode, any of these uncovered plain-looking spaces earn you 1 point each. And that's all you need to know to play advanced mode. When playing a 2-player game of Cosmic Colonies, there's only a few adjustments you have to make when playing either in advanced mode or basic mode. During setup, flip your scorecard over to reveal the other side. Set this up on the table so that it's in between both players, with an arrow pointing to each of you, if possible. In addition to dealing out 4 worker cards to each player during the game's setup, place 2 worker cards on each of the spaces on this board. Now in a 2-player game, instead of passing your workers over to the player on your left, take the 2 cards from this area here, specifically the area with the arrow pointed toward you. Then place the cards you would normally pass to the player on your left in the empty slot with the arrow pointing away from you. This system puts a 1-turn buffer between your cards and your opponent's cards, mimicking the presence of a third player. And that's all you need to know to turn your game of Cosmic Colonies into a 2-player experience. There's also a single-player mode available, but we won't be covering that in this video. You can find the rules for that in the back of the rulebook. Have an awesome day, and go play Cosmic Colonies. Thanks for joining us. If you like this video and you want to see more, subscribe to our channel. It's the best way to keep up to date with everything we do here at Board Game Coffee. But if you want to see more right now, we got plenty of videos to choose from. And if that's not enough, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. I'm Mark Maya, and this is Board Game Coffee. And remember, have fun, keep gaming, be social. See you next week.